We need our fight or flight response. But if you can use it and manipulise it to your advantage, it allows you to tolerate stress better. And not only tolerate it, but to control it. We are 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. 85% of them are working a negative bias. Up to 90, between 50 and 90% for a lot of people are habitual, which means that you've had the same thought process today as what you had yesterday and the day before. And for some people, 40, 50, 60, 70 years of their life.
Welcome to the 6th Mac and Chat podcast. We're delighted to welcome James Hughes, coach, breathwork master and cold water advocate, to join us to discuss the benefits of the breath and cold water therapy. Well, James, I'm flying solo today. Welcome along to the Mac and Chat podcast, brought to you by Mac Counselling and Wellbeing, and also the company I work for, London SGB.
Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I've heard lots of good stuff about you.
It's all lies, I can promise you.
Give me a wee bit of background about yourself, your personal life.
My personal life is, I think, quite integral to what I do just now. Because I think my personal life has probably brought me to where I am in many ways, why I do what I do every day. So I was a hairdresser for 21 years.
Whereabouts?
I had my own salon in Glasgow. I managed a salon in the city centre of Bath Street. I had my own salon in the High Street in Glasgow. And then I was in Australia for a year and a half, travelled all over kind of doing hairdressing. So in many ways, I think that itself has taken me to why I'm doing what I'm doing today, which is, communicating with people, connecting with people, and just there's a creativity still involved in what I do, which is all led for hairdressing. I was the youngest of 3 brothers as well, so I got all their hand-me-downs. And I got to be jealous that I wasn't quite there yet, and there was 5 years between each of us. So my wee dad, every 5 years, like clockwork, there was about a week and a month between us all in those 5 years. And actually, I seen the big jump from my brother when I was 10, he was 20, the middle one was 15, and it was always inspired by who they were hanging about with, who were the cool guys. They were all into football and stuff. I was not. I was a musical theatre. I was a performing arts. My mum and dad didn't really have a fucking clue what to do with me. I was like, he's all right over there. He'll be fine. Whereas they two were causing all the riots. So
give him a stage, you'll be fine.
He'll be absolutely all right.
Big brothers are battling with people up. Come on.
Absolutely. Come on, I'll sort you out.
We'll dance off.
And in many ways, I think, that kind of set precedent for how I live my life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of relationships and stuff that I'm into as well was like, I'm the fixer. I'll see the problems and I'll learn for that. And now when you look back, you think, well, a lot of that was to a point, the worthiness of the self-esteem that you had within yourself was so low because I was kind of left to my own devices.
So schooling, what schooling did you do?
Schooling, stayed again, Bridgeton, John Street Academy, John Street Secondary, until that closed down, moved up to East Bank Academy up in Shettleston, and that was a hard time for me. I was.
And what years was this?
So we're talking, I started secondary school in 1985, 86.
Right, so just a couple of years.
No, I'm talking nonsense. 1995, 96.
Right, okay,
I'm doing myself out here. I was born in 83.
You're looking good for a couple of years younger than me.
It's all the breathing. So it was late 90s by the time I moved up to Shettleston, and that was an eye opener, because in many ways the place that kind of protects you is also the thing that you realise that when you step out of that side, you don't have the same resources, you don't have the same Neddy young guys running about you who are taking the piss out of you, but at the same time they're the ones that are protecting you as well.
So you left school?
Left school.
What age?
I stayed on till I was 17, so I went back for 6 years and then decided it wasn't for me, decided I'd grown out of it completely, and went to college, done architecture. 3-dimensional design, and I wanted to do architecture, and just realised that actually for me it wasn't the path I wanted to do. I wanted to be creative, but I didn't want that being confined to a desk Monday to Friday 9 till 5. And I went to London for a year, followed a partner, followed a big love down in London.
What age was that?
I'd have been 20 at that point, and just thought, this is not for me. So I think the travel bug was always there, which probably led me on later a few years to go into Australia. I think Glasgow for me at the time, late 90s, early 2000s, I was quite frightened. It was a frightening place to be. I'm a gay guy as well, so growing up in the East End at that point, it was quite a terrifying place. Like you said, if you were different, if you stepped outside the parapet, if you raised your head too far, you were shot down immediately. So I think I had a lot of attachment to living in a fear state, and my nervous system just at that point was like, I need to be free. This is quite a terrifying place to be.
Glasgow, I'm not saying it's a funny place. In one hand, it's the most accepting.
Yep.
And on the other hand, it's the most, like you said, fierce.
Yep.
And a lot of it is It's a big front it puts on. Glasgow puts a big front on.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think I've learned is that it's great to do well and it's great to progress, and people love to see you progress, and people until a point. And everybody's lovely to you when you're moving forward until you get to a point that it challenges them, and it's like he's fully himself, or who does he think he is? He's got a new arse and forgot his old one.
Does he know what he came for?
That's it. And all of that suppression, I think, for me was I need to get away. It was suppression of who I was and who I was trying to accept who I was as well was difficult.
But do you not think that's a West of Scotland?
Aye, absolutely.
It's that you should be a working man. You should be getting your hands dirty.
Of course.
We're not taught creativity in school. We're not taught the arts in school. We're not given the freedom to express yourself.
Totally.
I mean,
and I get it, because our parents didn't have that freedom to express themselves creatively. Very much was that working man society. It was Glasgow was that working class city, and my dad and mum, as much as they loved me dearly, for me being different, what I seen from them was that they didn't know how to deal with it. So it was a case of, well, if he's normal, if he fits into a box the same as my other brothers, then he's all right. But when I now think back to the times where I was left alone, it was because they didn't know what to do with me, because I was different. So there was always that creativity in me that was suppressed. There was always that need to be seen, and it was only because I didn't feel seen as a child.
You use a cracking instrument there. I need to be seen.
Mm-hmm. We all have a need to be seen.
Yeah, but it's I need to be seen, but other issues, you know what I mean? But it's that wanting to be number one. You want to be out front. You want to be a good word I'm looking for is gallus.
Mm-hmm.
Gallus.
I think the gallus, the maybe not the need to be number one, but I think the need to at least feel significant in your peer group, to be accepted, I think, is a fundamental need for most of us. And when you're younger and you're trying to fit in, there's a conflict going on within you, because you don't want to stand out, but at the same time, you want to have your own identity. You want to feel like you're growing out the person you're going to become.
But sometimes you can't find your tribe.
That's true. And I think that's why I decided that for me it was leaving Glasgow, spread my wings and seeing...
Go and find yourself. Go find yourself.
And ironically enough, I think, looking back, probably the place that I was fearful of was the place that kind of kept me quite grounded. And it was there all along. I was just looking for it in the wrong places. I was trying to find acceptance from others rather than accepting myself.
Who are you looking for acceptance from?
It always goes back to your parents. For me, it was always my mum and dad. Nothing you ever done was not enough, but nothing you ever done was praised, because that was just who he was. He just done well.
But do you not think that was a generation thing coming from those parents? Absolutely. Because I had the same problem with my father. My father died of cancer a while ago, and go back, and he said to me, he's dying, his deathbed, I love you. Mm-hmm. And the tears will come to my eyes, and why tell me now, Dad?
Yeah. I
could have heard that. He says, aye, but you knew. And you're like, fucking fly old fox, he's right.
Absolutely.
I did, but I think we're a different generation for what we are now. Yeah. I mean, every time one of my boys phones me, or on the phone, it's I love you, Dad, blah, blah, blah. So we're a different...
It's lovely to see a younger generation being so in touch with their emotions.
Yes.
Because those words do mean a lot, and I think the more we give it, the more we hear it, whether we're giving it to ourselves, it reinforces the need to use that language.
My two boys are, one's getting married, one's about to have their my first grandchild. Okay. And I've said this to MD's got a baby. They'll always be your babies, and there's no better words than thanks, Dad, or thanks, Mum.
Absolutely.
And hearing that from a different perspective rather than looking for it, it makes me feel better. So, London, what happened in London?
London was just an experience. London was down there for a year working...
Hairdressing, bars?
I hadn't started hairdressing at that point.
Right, okay.
I think I was trying to pursue every gay profession under the sun. I was working for Thompson's. I was an assistant manager of... Remember Lumpolly?
Yes.
I worked for Lumpolly. Realised that just at that point I thought I'm running away from something, and it was more about setting myself up for my future. Didn't feel like a career, just felt like I was just following someone and running away from something. So I came back up to Glasgow, worked in Glasgow, various other jobs, realised I wanted to be creative. I actually was getting my hair cut by a guy, Gerard, and Betty Riley's in Glasgow. So I was getting my hair cut in Betty Riley's, and I said to the guy, Gerard,
I could do that, he's a job.
That's what I said to him. I went, what made you become a hairdresser? He's like, I like being chatty and I like being creative. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when I look back to all the graphic, architectural, that side of the design, I wasn't getting to be chatty and creative at the same time. So it was always, for me, it was always like a kinesthetic feeling. There was something that had to be more tactile for me. And I was like, I think I'm going to do that. And just pursued it. Started working in the Rainbow Room in Glasgow. I was probably one of the oldest apprentices around, because I was 20 at that point. And that genuinely was true. I found it really difficult. Because people wouldn't give you a job if you weren't a school leaver.
As my wife worked in a hairdresser's as a nail technician, and the stories you hear.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, it was probably some of the best times in my life, because you did get full creative control to be yourself, creative freedom to be yourself.
What year was this?
That would be 2003, around about then, 2003, 2004.
And you started your YTS back then, your apprenticeship.
I actually was one of the first to complete a 1-year apprenticeship in Scotland, because they just introduced it that year, and that was the only reason why I get taken on as an apprentice, because they could give me my YTS 65 quid a week, and I'd done that for a year, and I worked, I kid you not, I was probably the most well off I've ever been in my life, because I'd done homers every night, every weekend. I'd finish at 6, I'd work to 12.
Did you get to keep your own tips when they pulled?
No, they got to keep my own tips. Okay. No, it was the Rainbow Room with a good company for that. It was great fun. And I learned by doing, I learned that the rules are there for a reason, but when you know them, you can break them, and you learn a lot from that. Mm-hmm. So it was the first time, I think, creatively I felt like I got a chance to express myself. And
whereabouts in Glasgow were you staying then?
I was still my mum and dad.
Still mum and dad?
I came back after London, went back to my mum and dad's. I had a great family and do have a great family and feel very lucky. But it was just trying to fit in. It was trying to feel a part of something that people understood you.
And when did you tell your mum and dad about your situation?
My dad didn't really know. One of my good friends' mum told my dad in Blackpool, of all places, good old East End of Glasgow, go to Blackpool in September. And she told my dad. And I think they both probably knew. I think my mum maybe tried to deny it and suppress it for fear of what life would look like for me being more challenging. And I think my dad always knew it was just the unspoken rule, let's not talk about it. And it's probably the only time I've fallen out with him throughout my entire adult life, because he just didn't want to speak about it. And part of me was like, but I need acceptance. I need at least acknowledgement that you're aware of this and you're okay with it. And I got that. And now looking back, my mum and dad were not big on PDA. So it was nothing necessarily to do with my sexuality. Of course, they wanted a normal life for me. But part of that was that they just didn't know how to speak about it. They didn't know how to speak to my brothers about their heterosexual relationships. So then there was me having this same-sex relationship. Fuck, where do we go with this one?
You're very right, because my father was that generation, and you found out things by your mates, your big brothers, your sisters, and Absolutely. It was unspoken to. Yep. And things are completely different now, James. I mean, you go into social media and it's quite funny. You type in things, you've got it as an instant. If we want to find things, we have to make an appointment, go to a library, pick up a book, and do research on some things. It's a scary place we're in. I
feel quite lucky that the mum and dad that I've got, although they maybe didn't speak about it, they were still very accepting of it all. And I remember I used to think about a pal who was one of the head makeup artists for Dior, and it was just a great laugh. We guy was a brilliant laugh. And he was in my house one night. We were going out when I say a full face of makeup on, he had his everyday glam. And my dad walked in, came around to take my dog out. My dad went, "Oh, your makeup's lovely, son." And that was it. And in that wee moment for me was the acceptance of going, look, I'm fine with this. I don't know what else to say, so I'm going to compliment the only thing that looks different. Rather than going, I like your shoes, or, oh, he's going out. It was like, your makeup's lovely, son. So part of that for me was like, right, he's okay. He's all right.
I've got visions in my head.
It wasn't full drag makeup, it was,
guy liner.
Guy liner and a bit of foundation. So it was that wee moment of, all right, okay, you're fine with this.
But how did you feel about that? I mean, that must have been a great stepping stone for yourself.
It was, but it's what you said earlier on. You're still always looking for the validation. You're still looking to hear those words that I love you, son, or I'm proud of you. And that doesn't always come in places that you expect it. It normally comes in the places that you don't expect it.
Aye, then the tears start running down the eyes.
That's it. We're going through a similar situation just now with my dad, where he was diagnosed with lung cancer just last year, and we almost lost him back in January. And it's been challenging. But what I've been able to contribute with my breathwork stuff, the coaching side of things, that's given me a lot of validation, because I can see where I can now step up for him. And the stepping up for him in this real vulnerable state of him receiving it is the acceptance of going, okay, I appreciate it, I trust you, and I'm very, very grateful for it. So it's kind of done full 360 in the last year. And it's
so hairdressing, go back to it, where did we finish up with hairdressing? How did we manage to hang the towel and the scissors up?
So there's a wee interim period in between hairdressing as well, when I went to Australia after qualifying. I went to Australia, I lived in Australia for a year and a half. I was manager of a salon in Sydney, right at the bottom of the Sydney Central Tower. Amazing experience, but I just realised I'd replaced what I had back in Glasgow with it over in Australia. I wasn't getting to experience living there. I wasn't getting to experience what it was like to travel. And I think that's always been the drive for success, to be seen, to be doing well. And actually what that creates is this kind of self-deprivation where you just keep working more and more and never stopping and living and experiencing. So I was managing a salon out there, decided it was time to kind of come back home and came back to Glasgow, went to study musical theatre. You might have guessed at one point that was going to come back out. And I'd done that for a couple of years, went to Motherwell College, done my HND in musical theatre, and then thought, right, this experiences is what I'm challenging myself on, this is what I'm looking for. And I decided then that I wasn't going to go to London. I didn't want to pursue that as a career. I wanted to make money. I was 24, 25 at this point, and opened a salon in Glasgow. So that was the way, I think it was 2009 that would take us to.
Whereabouts in Glasgow?
High Street.
High Street.
Just know the old part of the High Street when you're coming up West George Street and the High Street meets. Crumbs was the electrical shop in the corner, was there forevermore, sold all the wee Hoover parts. And then I was 265 High Street, the one right after that.
One of my friends used to have a record shop just up the hill from it.
Right.
Level 1 Records, Chris Keegan, just before the lane back down the way.
Oh, okay.
I know where that is.
I know, I was there. I was there for till 2017.
This is when the old days when they used to sell records.
Well, they're coming back again, aren't they?
I know.
Everywhere you go.
It's a funny story. I got my son a record player for his birthday, 30 years of age, when buying him his first record player.
And there's something about it, I think, that's so mindful, sitting listening to a record now, where you listen to it from start to finish. You know, you go into Spotify, you skip a song, you put a playlist on the background, and it just randomises the songs. And actually putting an album on, I've got a record player in the house, and there's something about just choosing to listen to an album from start to finish.
I had a great conversation on my son's birthday with his fiancée about the way, back then especially, they were made as a journey. You had a song that would lift you up or bring you back down if you listen to an album properly.
Yeah.
There's quite a few albums like that, but that's another story. So we're back in hairdressing in Glasgow.
Back in hairdressing in Glasgow.
You're age 24, footless and fancy free.
Footless and fancy free, living the life, or so they say. And it was back into what I said earlier, Paul. It was this need to just work and work and work. And I was doing 7 days a week.
But why?
I don't know. It was just, I think part of me was I seen that modelled in my mum as well. And part of that she was out from 4 or 5 in the morning. She used to run a news agents, then it was a spa shop. She was out from 4 in the morning till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. I just had modelled that as that's what you do. And the expectation, especially if you're growing your own business, well, you need to put the time and the effort in. You know, and now looking back, you think, well, it was a great experience. It was a great learning curve, but it was also a lot of wasted time. There's such a thing as a busy fool, where you think, yes, I'm busy, but where I'm actually getting or what I'm achieving. And at that point, I didn't feel like I was achieving much. And ironically enough, I was probably achieving more then than what I've ever achieved in my life. I worked for an American company called Unite as well. I was the European educator for them. It was a hair care product line. I done New York Fashion Week, London Fashion Week. I was a bridal expert. I done fashion shoots, modern stage shows. It was all going on at that time, but I was still never feeling like I was truly enough at that point. I had grown a team where we won Scottish Salon of the Year. We were one of the most, at that point, I would say one of the most smaller, successful salons in and around Glasgow. But again, on the inside, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel any of those things.
Where are we now?
2000, right now, this very moment. Oh, where are we now? So I've still had a salon, still kept my hand in a little bit of hairdressing for the last 5 or 6 years. Again, it's that creativity, and also part of it reinforces what I do now as a coach, as a breathwork coach, as a life coach.
Breathwork, what is it?
Breathwork, well, luckily for you, you're doing it every day. So that's the thing that keeps it alive.
Say, how can you be a breathwork coach? Surely it's easy. It's natural.
It is natural. But what we're finding is that about 550 million people across the world, this is an estimation of it, most people breathe dysfunctionally. So we either overbreathe. Right now, you and I are having a conversation. We're exchanging a lot of gas. We're overbreathing. We're taking in far too much air. And we're doing it fast in large volumes. So breathwork is a manipulation of gas. We breathe in oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide. And if you remember, high school physics was carbon dioxide was the waste gas. So it's all about controlling and manipulating the gas exchanging in your body.
I look at things sometimes funny. I've always said people say up gas too much.
And that, ironically enough,
that's where it comes from.
That's exactly where it comes from. We overbreathe. There was a book that was written in, I think it was about 1880, and it's called Shut Your Mouth to Save Your Life, When the reality is that you think about what's the mouth, what's the sole purpose of the mouth? Is to eat, to talk, to smile, to
express.
Absolutely. What's the purpose of the nose? To breathe. So if you wouldn't eat through the nose, why are you breathing through your mouth? So it really is about shut your mouth to save your life. That the more we think about in a fast-paced world that we live in just now, stress has never been so prevalent. Everybody owns their stress, everyone owns their anxiety. And a lot of what's happening is a biomechanical response to that stress. We're breathing hard and fast.
Yep.
We're increasing our stress response. We're activating the sympathetic response within our nervous system. So controlling your breath and manipulating the breath work is all about controlling your immune system, your nervous system, and your endocrine system. So the hormone exchange and the chemical release in the body.
So slow down.
Slow down.
Slow down.
And
slow down speaking as well.
Spell all that there is in one breath. And that is exactly it. We're living fast paced. We're trying to be seen, we're trying to be heard, and we're trying to feel significant. And when we do that, we're feeling like a failure. What happens? We try to do more. But actually, ironically enough, when you think about it, if I was to say to you, taking a deep breath for me. Taking a deep breath.
I'm slightly different.
Why is that?
Because I trained in martial arts.
Oh, okay. So you'll be an enlightened being then?
Not really. No.
But when it comes to breathing?
When it comes to also understand, not mindfulness, I do a wee bit of hypnotherapy as well.
Great.
So it's like you breathe in, you fill your stomach up.
Yep.
And it's we do a breathing exercise before martial arts, and we kind of go full circle with it. You breathe in through your nose and you can,
yep.
And then you close it, put it back out, and it taught us how to breathe, because obviously if you're breathing, you're getting your fuel in your body, and we did that for 2 or 3 minutes before or after class, especially after class when you're getting your breathing back down.
Yep.
If you've been in this, but also I find sometimes, rightly or wrongly, like you says, if I'm in a stressful situation,
breath controls the stress response.
Let's take a step back, and so I'm a wee different from somebody else.
And ironically enough, though, even people who know how to breathe, and you think about the yoga community that teaches people how to breathe when connecting breath to movement, a lot of even what you just done there, when we think about this breath, if you're breathing loudly, you're breathing too hard. And the reason why I say we're breathing too hard is we're expelling carbon dioxide. So yes, taking a deep breath is really important, but there's so much more biomechanical that we need to focus on, which is breathing lighter, breathing slower, and breathing deeper. So a deep breath for many of us, which you were going to say there, sorry?
It's like we say, the deep breath. Normally people just go,
yeah, and you just done it beautifully. You just into the upper respiratory, into the shoulders, and actually what you do is you suspend your breath. So by doing that, you actually suspend the breath. You're acting as a vasodilation then. Vasoconstriction. So your blood vessels, we've got 70,000 to 100,000 blood vessels.
They're just going stop.
So what happens? The carbon dioxide in the body is not allowing the gas exchange for oxygen through the lungs, into the blood, and then from the blood to the cells, into the tissues.
And how did we find this out, James? I find this is absolutely way above my head and fascinating.
Oh, honestly, Paul, I don't even know where to begin.
How did we first go?
I think the ironic thing is we didn't find this out. I think a lot of it is we forgot. We forgot how to breathe. I mean, you think about mindfulness-based training over the last 30 years has only really became quite prominent in Western world, in the UK and Europe and America. Actually, it's been taught by yogis for hundreds of thousands of years. The yogic pranayama breath is that the longer you extend your breath, the longer you live. So the less breaths you take, the longer you live, which is breathing slower, breathing lower, and breathing deeper.
It's like a breath per year. So I'm running on so many breaths per...
Well, we're on average, we take in about 20 to 25,000 breaths a day on average. Some people with respiratory issues will take more. It's just like you're treading your tiles. Totally. And at some point it's going to run empty. So if we think about when we breathe in, and most people are breathing in, so think about the mouth is connected to the upper respiratory. The nose is connected to your diaphragm. And by the way, we all breathe by using our diaphragm, whether it's nose or mouth. Diaphragm's the stomach bit. Absolutely. So we've got this beautiful big muscle that sits underneath the ribs. Just for people out there that don't understand. Yeah, your diaphragm, when you breathe in, that pushes down, heart rate increases. When you breathe out, that contracts back up, heart rate slows down. So we're actually always working with balancing the nervous system from activation to down regulation. This goes back to my martial arts, my old yin yang. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, the light and dark, the yin and yang. You need both. And where people for so long now, we're hearing the vagus nerve thrown about and your stress response and your fight or flight response. We need all of it. We need our fight or flight response. But if you can use it and manipulise it to your advantage, it allows you to tolerate stress better. And not only tolerate it, but to control it. So coming in here today is obviously nerve-wracking for me, because I'm thinking, right, I've got a guy in front of me, I don't really know him, he's going to ask me questions, he's going to test my ability, and this thirst for knowledge that I have is also the fear of, shit, I'm going to get caught out here because I'm not good enough.
Aye.
So that's always playing in the back of your mind. How do you control that? Control that with your breath.
And you go back to the wee boy.
Totally.
Sometimes we all get that. We all get that. And sometimes I've been in situations where you think you're on the outside looking in, and you're listening to yourself going, he's talking. Does he really know?
Yep.
That's me down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's allowing the breath to give that part a chance to just quiet, to come out of this prefrontal cortex, this activation mind, this fear of getting caught out, and going back into a state of feeling, going back into a state of being, into your limbic system, which is a primitive part of the brain. Actually, this prefrontal cortex, this thinking part, is one of the most modern form parts of our minds. And it's we're the only species that have the ability to create stories. So I always say, unless it's in the room with you, everything else is just a story. Why are you attaching to it? Because thinking and thought are two very different things. Thought is always omnipresent, it's always there, but thinking is the ability to latch onto the thought. So if you observe the thought, but you're not thinking about it, well, the thought's just going to come and go at one point. I think we are in this downward spiral. The most we can do is try and up or control that in an upward spiral, where we're in control and we're giving ourselves space to assess and to be able to review our behaviour, because we only live in a feeling of our past experience, which is familiar. So for most of us, your past doesn't equal your future unless you're constantly staying there. But if you live in that past experience,
but your past experience is a marker for you.
It's a roadmap to things to avoid or to things to utilise. But we've got the ability of choice. We've got the free will to choose. You can choose to recreate the same behaviours and still expect to get a different outcome. Or you can choose to say, in the past,
I tried this and it didn't work.
In what sense?
No, sorry. Like you say, you can look back and go, I tried this before.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yes. I think
and it didn't work.
Experience. Yep.
So why should I try it again and look for the same outcome?
But then a lot of people attach that meaning to everything, and nothing's got a meaning except the meaning you give it. So because, well...
No, it's just, it's meanings and sayings that people say. It's like that. It is what it is. It's not one of my favourite sayings. I prefer to say, it is what you make it.
It absolutely is what you make it. And I think someone that says it is what it is almost giving up the free will and control. I think if somebody solely goes, it is what it is, and I'm accepting it, it is what it is very powerful. But if someone goes, oh, it is what it is, they're choosing to be confined to the restrictions of their own beliefs because it's happened to them before, it's going to continue to happen to me again. And that's why I says earlier on that actually the path of the last 20 years of hairdressing has led me to where I am today. Because throughout that, from training as a coach, which started off as hypnotherapy, NLP and coaching, actually that gave me the ability to practice on clients too. I wouldn't say the word manipulate, but certainly be able to identify where they are.
This way.
And it's amazing though, the shift in perspective when it comes from someone who's impartial, gives somebody so much power. But you try to say that to your partner, you try to say that to your parent, it's very different to teach somebody. But when you come from a safe space, and I think, what we do as hairdressers and nail technicians and beauty therapists, if we think about energy, you're in somebody's energetic space. So you've got a great deal of power to manipulate their energy. How do you make them feel? And I think if you change the experience, you change the emotion. And when you change the emotion, that changes the full thought process in your own life.
And it's a two-pronged approach for you there, James, because if you're making somebody change, you talk about changing life and how it make you feel. If you're making them look beautiful, visually, they're going to make them look better. But if you're advising them on how to feel better, it's like a double-pronged sword there. Absolutely.
The irony behind that is, it's a bit paradoxical in many ways, because the irony behind making somebody look better, if they don't feel good on the inside, it doesn't matter what you do in the external, they're never going to see the value in who they are as a person. So it all comes back to that self-awareness, that mind-body connection as well. How do I feel when I see me reflecting back in myself? And it all goes back to what we've spoke about. That's that relationship you've got with that small child. How were you spoken to? How did you feel? How do you speak to that person now? Because if you're labelling yourself where I'm not good enough and I'm hopeless and this is rubbish and I'm not attractive or whatever it may be.
Sometimes it's quite hard to break that.
It's very hard to break it. But the beauty of the word there is you says break it. So there's the belief that that's a habit. We are 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. 85% of them are working a negative bias. Up to 90, between 50 and 90% for a lot of people are habitual, which means that you've had the same thought process today as what you had yesterday and the day before. And for some people, 40, 50, 60, 70 years of their life. We run retreats. We've got a business called Scotland Retreats as well, where we bring people along for 3 and 4 day weekends. I'm all about getting you from where you are today to where you want to be, which is breathing, cold water therapy and coaching. I don't want you to sit with me for 6 months or 9 months or the next year. I want you to come in and feel dramatically different in this moment, because then I've got a buy-in that there's a possibility that I could feel different. And if I can get you to have that buy-in, you can feel different now, well, there's a difference in the future.
And you get a kick out of that as well.
I get the most amount of significance from it. I also get a huge amount of connection from it. I get all of this level of uncertainty, because what if not? But at the same time, I get this huge drive of safety, because I'm in a space where people trust me. And then you can, I suppose, if you think about it from a needs point of view, I'm getting a lot of spiritual growth from that, because I'm able to grow as a person, and I'm also able to give back.
It's quite funny. In one of my other jobs, I'm a DJ, and there's no better feeling than somebody sitting, nodding their head, or tapping their feet.
Absolutely.
You're making somebody feel good.
Yep.
So what came first, the breath workshop, the cold water? Because I see you've got a couple of...
I've got a few modalities to this thing with that one.
Modalities.
For me...
In fact, I better stick to the script, because the boss isn't here. So number 1 is breathwork.
Okay.
Right.
There's actually, breathwork is actually more of a modern approach to it. So my fundamental with all of this is coaching. As a transformational coach, and I'm a strategic interventional coach, and that's where breathwork and cold water and using your physiology is so important in coaching. Which is kind of why I says I don't want to have somebody with me for 6 months, 9 months or a year. I want them to realise that they've got the ability, and it's innate. You know, a bird doesn't need to be shown how to use its wings. It's got the innate ability to know that it can fly, and I want to give people that back. So how do you do it? Quickest way, get yourself out here and get yourself back into here. Out of the head and into the body.
I thought you were doing a Christian thing
No, I'm definitely not religious. Not that there's anything wrong with being religious, but I'm not religious. It's about getting people unstuck. And breathing is one of the things that keeps us stuck. Dysfunctional breathing keeps us unstuck.
I would say that it'd be short, sharp.
Short, sharp. Would they take in more air or less air?
Possibly less air.
I would say probably more air. Higher volumes of air. So more air, but less gas exchange. So less oxygen delivery, but more air. And again, remembering we're breathing in there and exchanging oxygen in the blood. So it's about understanding that how you breathe creates dysfunctional patterns in the body. So if we think about it from a 3-dimensional point of view, so we've got a biochemical response, so a tolerance to carbon dioxide. What's our chemosensitivity or a set point for the body tolerating carbon dioxide? We don't breathe for the need to bring in more oxygen. We breathe for the need to expel carbon dioxide. Okay, so the driver to breathe is not oxygen or air. The driver to breathe is to get rid of carbon dioxide. Right? Carbon dioxide is what we need to tolerate more in our body, because it acts as a vasodilator and allows us to transfer for better oxygen exchange. So you spoke about your life of what was you done? Sorry, from Taekwondo, martial arts. From martial arts, you're right. Taking that breath in, slow breathing at the end, allows for better gas exchange. So it's offsetting lactic acid. It's increasing the body's delivery of oxygen, not only to your cells, your organs, all these things, but more importantly to the brain. People who are stressed have a reduction of up to 50% oxygen to the brain with chronic stress and anxiety. Right. It's a massive number, up to 50%. So 1 milligram of mercury of carbon dioxide reduction in the body can result in 2% reduction of oxygen to the brain. Reduction of oxygen to the brain means reduction of blood flow to the brain as well. So it's about increasing blood flow to the entire body. I like to think about carbon dioxide as being like, I'll not use Glasgow's subway as a prime example for that, because it's just going around in a circle. But if you think about these 70 to 100,000 miles of blood vessels we've got in the body, carbon dioxide is the trains. Okay, now if we don't tolerate enough carbon dioxide, the trains become smaller. Now the trains carry your hemoglobin, they carry the good oxygen-rich blood around the body. The more trains we attach to the carriages, the more oxygen-rich blood we've got to transport around our body. So it's all about tolerating carbon dioxide. Now there's a caveat with this, because a lot of people have a lower tolerance to carbon dioxide. If you've got a lower tolerance to carbon dioxide...
How would you find that out?
So there's a thing called the Bolt score. So the Bolt score would be, you would take normal breath in and out through the nose. You would hold on the exhalation, pinching the nose and holding it. So we do it. So light breath, natural breath. So again, we're not forcing it. We're not taking in large volumes of air. It's all about reducing the volume of air. People think that Stop there now, because I'm going to time you.
Okay.
So people think that the more air I take in, the better
Good
for
for
me.
cameras, this one, isn't it?
We've still got exercises to go.
Right.
So what I want you to do is take in 4 or 5 light natural breaths in and out through the nose. And on the exhalation, I'm going to time you right. I want you to pinch your nose and hold on the exhalation, and we'll see how long you can hold it for.
This doesn't make
Right,
good
that's
radio.
it. How's that feel there? Did you
Tight.
feel the need to breathe?
Yes.
So you were about 6 or 7 seconds. So that's major dysfunctional breathing. Do you snore?
Yes.
So there's potential of sleep apnea.
But on the back of that, I'm bad for this. I had quite bad COVID.
Okay.
And I've been told my lung capacity is not what it should be.
Absolutely. So this is why this is even more important for you.
Can I fix that?
150%. Not fix it. You can help
Regenerate
decrease
it.
and reduce the symptoms and have more control over it. So I'm so glad you said that, because so many people off the back of COVID are suffering with long COVID, which is reduced lung function. So there's a huge need for air hunger in that. Now, what I would say to anyone listening as well, I'm not professing here to be able to cure long COVID. If anyone wants to check anything out, look at the Buteyko technique. It is a wonderful technique for people with asthma, long COVID. B-U-T-Y.
Slow down.
Too many things. We've only got an hour.
Hi, B-U-T.
B-U-T-Y-C-O or C-E-O.
Right.
Buteyko. And this technique has been proven to not get rid of things like asthma, rhinitis, inflammatory lung disorders, any of these things, but help the sufferer cope with the symptoms and manage their symptoms without the need to use inhalers and various other things. Now, of course, there's still the need for that if symptoms become too great, but if you can manage your symptoms, then potentially you then are strengthening your lungs to overcome it. Long COVID is such a new thing for all of us that there's still so much studies going into this, but what you need to do is increase your tolerance to carbon dioxide greatly. Now, there's many different techniques that you could do, and I'll certainly pass the guys on at Mac if they want to reach out, or if there's any information I can help with them. But doing small breath holds can potentially help. But again, you were able to hold your breath for 6 seconds there.
The only reason I talked is because it's a podcast and it's dead air. Doesn't sound good, James?
And you know, but the ironic thing with that
if
is,
you keep talking, I would have held my nose.
but the ironic thing is, most people will, and especially if you've been in the martial arts, you're generally going to be a high achiever that you want to push and you don't want to show weakness.
Totally.
Now, most people, when they're going to do it, are going to try and hold past that point of biting their hunger. It's all about the minute you get that need to breathe is when you release. That's your BOLT score. So that's your blood oxygen tolerance. Okay. What you want to try and do is grow that and extend that as much as you can by exercises that help to strengthen your lungs. When we breathe in our upper respiratory, that's where all our air sits, but all of our good blood sits down at the lower part of our lobe. So we want to breathe as low down to that as possible and as slow, and then start to allow for all the wee alveoli, all the wee air sacs that sit in the lungs to release carbon dioxide, which is releasing good oxygen into the blood. But more importantly, there's a lot of stagnant air that sits in there. That's what's happened with COVID.
Stagnant air.
Stagnant air, stagnant carbon dioxide. So it means there's a blockage in the gas exchange. So we need to allow for better vasodilation to allow for...
It sounds completely off the wall, but it kind of makes sense.
Well, that's what the primary driver of our lungs is. So it's about expelling that stagnant air and strengthening it. So introduction to small breath holds is really, really important.
And what is a small breath hold?
A small breath hold would be breathing for 10 or 15 seconds. So I'm using your BOLT score as a 6 seconds there just as a primary example. If you're suffering from long COVID, I wouldn't hold your breath for more than half of your ability to hold your breath. Okay, so for you would be 3 seconds. So we would breathe just 5 or 10 seconds in and out through the nose, keeping it nice and light, focusing on engaging with the diaphragm, nice and soft, gentle breaths in, and relaxing soft breath out. On your next exhale, I want you to hold your nose for 3 seconds. Exhale fully, and hold your nose for 3 seconds. So on your next exhale. So we're going to breathe in, breathe out, pinch your nose and hold for 1, 2, 3, breathe in, and then continue to breathe for another 10 or 15 seconds. Now, what we're doing with that as well is we're warming the air. So if you breathe through your mouth, you're bringing in cold air, which will aggravate all the wee fibres in the lungs. Now, with the exercise we just done, you could do for 5 or 10 minutes at any one time, but ideally you would want to do that for about an hour per day. By breathing in through your mouth cold air, you're aggravating all the wee fibres in your lungs. By breathing in through the nose, we're triggering nitric oxide.
It's enlightening, James. It truly is. But like I said, a lot of my theories go back to the Japanese and the martial arts. And you just said something, when you're breathing through your mouth, it's cold air. And you know, you walk out on a winter's day,
Takes your mouth in.
you see it, but you don't see it coming out your nose.
That's true. Why do you see that? Because when we breathe in, so the nose has got 30 primary functions, right? I'm not going to go through every one of them, but one of them's to warm the air.
Yeah.
Adds moisture into the air, but when we breathe back out
It's
through
also
our
got
nose,
big hairies in it to take the bad things.
all the antibodies,
My
all the
wife
free
hates
radicals.
them. My wife hates it.
What, the hairs in your nose?
Yes, honestly. There's no greater pain than the tweezers.
But there's a reason why we shouldn't do that. So if you can, trim them rather than get rid of them.
I know
okay. That. So you're warming and moistening the air coming in, but more importantly, you're allowing for warm, moist air coming back out. So you're breathing in cold, allowing for a soft gas exchange in the lungs. We're also then starting to widen the nasal cavity because we're increasing what I keep talking about, vasodilation at the back of the nose. So the nose hold allows for that, and it allows for better gas exchange. Think about, you spoke about the Japanese martial arts. Did you ever see a Japanese martial artist going, no, they were calm, they were composed.
That's why they were scary. That's why they were scary.
That's why they were scary. Yep. And you also couldn't see when they were tired. So your opponent didn't know when you were fatigued.
I've got another funny story there, talk about noises. I did have a snoring problem. I did have a problem with my nose. I went to get my wife killed me because I got a no job through the National Health for nothing.
Okay.
To clear the blockage. It was my big boy's birthday, so we met in town. We were walking up Buchanan Street. We met a prominent Glasgow who owns a pubs and owned clubs all his life. A very good friend of mine, long-standing friend of mine. I'll keep him nameless just now. And he's like, Paul, good to see you with your two boys. And the boys went, yep, know who you are, my dad's pal, blah, blah, blah. I got pulled to the side. And he said, yes. He said to me, you've disappointed me, Paul. So, why? He says, how long have I known you? I says, well, since Sunday nights in Joe Paps in 87. He went, you've got white powder hanging for your nose, Paul. I went, it's not white powder, it's antiseptic cleaner. I've just done a nose job. I says, but it's good to know you're looking out for me. He's like, you've restored my faith in you.
Love it.
Oh,
love it.
That's Glasgow. We'll tell you straight to your face.
That's it. At least he's pulled you aside.
Oh, aye. Yep. Excuse me, that's his daft phones now.
Not a problem.
Right, so
yes, so please, importance of all of that is nose breathing wherever possible. Okay, if you struggle with it, think about, it's easy to breathe through the mouth because we can take in larger volumes of air. When we've only got two holes, so we're replacing one with two, right? But actually we're still reducing the volume of air, which is increasing the body's tolerance and chemosensitivity to carbon dioxide. So in the breath part, that's the most important thing. Flip side of that is I do a lot of transformational breath work, which is the hard and fast stuff, and that helps to release.
What's hard and fast breath work?
So hard and fast would be using your mouth. So as much as I'm going against what I've just said, when our bodies have experienced trauma, so we think about trauma response to the nervous system, is the loss of connection to ourself. Now our bodies can get stuck in that. So our bodies hold a lot of trauma. A great book called Our Body Knows the Score. Our body holds on to our past experiences, which is why environment can trigger a stress response. You walk into a room, it feels a certain energy about it. You hold your breath, you feel that same level of panic and nervousness. Something at some point has triggered a response that you have behaved and breathed and biochemically and biomechanically responded in such a way that now the body's holding on to that same response.
So my spider sense starts tingling, that's what it is?
Yep.
So what's the benefits?
So the benefits of transformational breathwork is we allow the body to release a lot of trapped emotions. So our body has a great somatic ability to heal, but you think about at the animal kingdom, right? So tying back to nose breathing, only sick animals breathe through their mouth. All animals breathe through their nose. Farmer knows when an animal's unwell because it's breathing through its mouth. Yep. So we should continuously breathe through our nose. However, there's a great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the reason why zebras don't get ulcers is we're the only creatures that don't reset our nervous system.
We don't what, sorry?
Reset our nervous system.
So
think about a baby. Right, I'll go back to zebras in a second. Think about a baby when it cries, when it's young. What does it do? Cries, takes in a big deep breath, holds itself, and then resets, releases the stress that the body is building up. Zebras do the same thing. Most animals do the same thing. You're getting chased by a lion in the Serengeti plain after eating a blade of grass.
It sounds like a Billy Connor joke.
I promise it's no, stick with me with this. Well, what happens is if this zebra's nervous system is constantly on alert and a fight and fright response would increase adrenaline, increase cortisol. The increased levels of cortisol would be too much for it to sustain that threat because it doesn't have what we spoke about earlier on, the prefrontal cortex. It can't tell itself, well, that they lies a problem over there now, I'm fine over here. It only has to be aware momentarily. And then the fight or flight response kicks in. The zebra will outrun the lion. What happens when it outruns the lion? Within 15 minutes, it stops, shakes itself off, and goes back to eating the grass again. It resets its nervous system. So transformational breathwork is the reset of the nervous system. It allows us to put our body under a tolerable amount of stress, but controlled and in a safe environment, that when we feel that level of stress, we've been able to regulate our nervous system.
And how do you manage to generate that stress?
What do you mean, sorry? In the body?
Yes.
So we spoke earlier on about how does somebody breathe when they're stressed. They breathe hard and fast. They breathe through their mouth. They increase the volume of oxygen. So we do all those things in a controlled way. So where someone would be breathing a stressful mechanical response would be... Now, there's holotropic breathwork, there's other breathworks that forces you kundalini breathing. They force you to breathe in that way. But through transformational breathwork, it could be full expansion of the diaphragm. So you'd be breathing into the belly, which would be into the chest, and then soft and gentle exhale. So you're creating a rhythmic process to your breathing. By doing that, one, we're engaging the diaphragm. So we're engaging both hemispheres of the brain. We're engaging both sides of the nervous system. Stress response and the digest response. We're activating whilst bringing ourselves down into a state of regulation. And it all comes down to your environment. If you can keep that environment safe for the person who's breathing or yourself, then you can increase your body's tolerance to stress because you're willingly putting yourself into a stress response.
Right, we were over in Lanzarote, and it's just something. I've worked outside, well, I've been off the tools for a long time. Rain, cold water. And one of my hated working in the rain, but it's a life I chose. I was a scaffolder, I loved it. I still do love the job.
Than me.
Not really. Just the same trade, long time. But part of my YTS in 1988, 87, 88, I was sent to Lochiel Outward Bound Centre. And being a big, tough guy for Glasgow, suicide of Glasgow, being a scaffolder, they says, right, we'll go and jump in Lochiel.
How'd that go for you?
Fuck me. Right?
So that's exactly the same.
Right. I'll never, ever forget the situation where didn't put two and two together. I was used to holidays in Benidorm. My gran, we jumped in the warm water. But up there, jumped into Lochiel, and I thought I was going to die.
And you're doing that just now? What are you doing? Losing control of the breath?
Oh, total.
So cold water is a psychological stressor?
Total cold. I mean, I can still feel it today and I still get nightmares about it.
So cold water being a psychological stressor?
Over the last few years, we're seeing a lot more about cold water and cold water bathing, and I think a lot of it actually came from sports science.
Absolutely.
Where they had the plastic wheelie bins and all sit in it. So can you elaborate on the cold water therapy that you're doing now?
Absolutely. It's exactly the same. So exactly what you said, you jumped into the water, you can I get the breath? You're putting your body under a physical stressor and you're putting your mind under a psychological stressor. So the only way to overcome that, because it's the only way we can override our entire biochemical response, our biomechanical response, our endocrine system, our nervous system, and our immune system, is by controlling the breathing. So cold water is an external stressor because it puts pressure on the body. When you control your breathing, what you're doing is you're actually activating a thing called brown fat in the body.
Called what?
Brown fat. So this is good fat. Brown fat. And the reason why it's called brown fat is because when you see it under a microscope, it's brown by colour. So it's not regular fat, right? It's not fat that we see physically in our bodies. It tends to be around about the neck, the shoulders, in around the heart, the liver and the kidneys. Brown fat is something that babies have quite a lot of, and as we get older we lose it. You can activate brown fat cells, which is basically thermogenics in the body, thermoregulation within the body. You can activate it by breathing and by cold exposure. By breathing previous to cold exposure, you activate the brown fat cells, which sends more heat to your heart, to your organs, to your central core, and less to your extremities. And then by doing the cold exposure, what we then start to do is the body again does what we spoke about earlier on, vasodilation to the extremities. Sorry, vasoconstriction to the extremities, but vasodilation to the internal organs, which actually means that you're getting a better blood supply to your heart, to your organs, to your liver, to these things. However, the most important thing is that when you come out of that, understanding the benefit happens when blood starts to then go, because we, what's the word? I forgot the name of it. Where the body starts to pump blood harder and faster around the body as the vasoconstriction starts to reduce. I forgot the name of the word, and it's going to annoy me now.
You might Google it.
I probably got it written down somewhere.
Check your notes.
So that's basically what happens with cold water therapy. You're increasing adrenaline, so you're increasing neoadrenaline in the body, which is starting to put the body under a slight tolerable amount of stress. You're increasing cortisol. So when we think about inflammation in the body, we have got the ability to control our stress levels by activating the adrenal axis in the brain. When you activate the adrenal axis, that helps to allow for the reduction of cortisol. But if that's constantly in a heightened state, then it means there's constant production of cortisol, so stress response. When that's constantly in motion, our adrenaline's through the roof, cortisol's through the roof, and it starts to present in symptoms in the body like inflammation.
So it's a double-edged sword once again. It's going to make our mind
much stronger,
and our body. Who's it? Is it Dr. Wim or
Wim Hof? I'm with Jimmy Hof. You've got Wim Hof, I'm Jimmy Hof. But this is what's been I'm just Hof.
But this has all came down to social media exposing these things over the last few years.
You're seeing the benefit. You're seeing the benefit, and it's wonderful because we're talking about adrenaline and these things. Well, looking at dopamine, you've got a 2.5 times volume of dopamine rise in the body by exposure to cold water. We're looking at something like up to 500% increase in adrenaline in the body. Now, adrenaline is great as an activation. So if you're lacking in energy, throw yourself in cold water, you're going to give yourself a wee bit more energy. But control it with the breathing.
That's it. James, I think we'll have to try and cut this short just now because I think we're nearly just about time.
Oh, I'm disappointed
and
in that.
I'm disappointed. I've got so much more questions to ask you.
We need to do a part 2.
I think we will. I'm being serious here because everybody can see I've just scratched the surface here. Ross said you wouldn't shut up.
Oh, she's got a cheek.
Aye, well.
I'm very passionate about breathing because I think what I would say
everybody has to do it.
Everybody
has to how to do it properly.
So you might as well do it consciously. Bring awareness into your breath, start to change how your physiology responds to your breathing, and by doing so, you'll change how you respond to your environment.
If you were to give yourself one piece of advice at such an early age.
Oh, God, I didn't prepare myself for this question.
No, you wouldn't be. What would it be? If you were to say to a 16-year-old James.
I think 16-year-old James is accept yourself for who you are. Meet yourself where you are in this very moment and know that no matter what you're doing, it's going to work out. It's fine. And I know it's a bit of a cliche one, but it's meet yourself where you are right now. You've got all you've ever needed. I think that's what I've forgot. You've got all you're ever going to need in this very moment.
Listen, it's been a pleasure, and I think we need to really get you back in again because there's so much I want to ask you, and we've only got a short space of time. Thank you.
Thank you, my absolute pleasure for being here.